What is going on, everyone? It is me, the Lone Vault Wanderer, and I'm here with a discussion video about microtransactions. This is obviously a very touchy and a very controversial topic, and the reason why I've never covered it on my channel is because I know the kind of animosity that topics such as this can bring up in the gaming community. However, I want to try and have a rational, level-headed discussion with all of you, my subscribers and viewers, because recently I've been playing Overwatch, and as much as everyone else, I like the game. I really do like this game. And of course, in playing Overwatch, I have been introduced to the loot box system and the system of microtransactions that game has. Now, I'm actually very late with this. I know that Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling, just two examples of people, have made videos about this topic, and they actually both sit on different sides of the argument. Jim Sterling is effectively against the microtransactions that Overwatch has in the game, and Total Biscuit is for, or at the very least, he's accepting of the microtransactions in the game. And again, I want to have a discussion with all of you and present both sides of the argument as much as I can, so we can have that level-headed, rational discussion, because these kinds of discussions are important and things don't always have to end in a shit fight. So let's try and have that now. Be respectful in the comments as much as you can with other people, and let's get into this topic. So first of all, Overwatch's microtransaction system. The way it works, if you don't know, is that Overwatch has a leveling system. As you gain experience and level up, every level you unlock a loot box. Now, you get a number of items within these loot boxes, but these items do not actually improve your gameplay ability. They don't give you better weapons or better power-ups like a Call of Duty might. You can get a better gun, for example. Overwatch doesn't do that. Rather, these loot boxes that you unlock one level contain cosmetic items, such as costumes, such as voice lines, such as animations, and spray tags. And these loot boxes are random. Once you get one, you can potentially get a really good item that you don't have, or you could potentially get a very common item, or even an item that you already have as a duplicate, and you actually get currency for that instead. And where the microtransaction part comes into it is that you can purchase these loot boxes separately. You can't purchase the actual items themselves or all of these cosmetic unlocks, but you can purchase these loot boxes to get a random chance to get one of these cosmetic items that you really want. Now, as I mentioned before, Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit, who are YouTubers and personalities that I have a lot of fucking respect for. I think their opinions and points of view and arguments on most topics are really, really good. I don't always find myself agreeing with both of them, of course not, but I always respect their opinion, and I'm always willing to hear them out and engage in a discussion as much as I can. And I'm going to try and sum up their points of view on this topic as good as I can. And both of their videos on this topic, by the way, are in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. They're very long, especially Total Biscuit's video. He does one of his typical 40-minute videos that I fucking love, by the way. But if you don't have time for that, I'll try and summarize his points of view as much as possible. So first of all, Jim Sterling. I mentioned that he was against the microtransactions in Overwatch. Now, he does actually like Overwatch a lot. I believe he gave the game a 9 out of 10 in his review of Overwatch. But in his opinion, it is a shame that Overwatch as a premium retail game also contains microtransactions. He explains it as a fee-to-pay economy, that this game adopts a free-to-play model, where effectively it's designed to extract more money from you on top of the initial price that you paid for the game. Now, what he says is that games that charge an upfront fee, such as Overwatch, have already charged for their entry fee, is how he describes it. And he criticizes the fact that Blizzard with Overwatch then goes on to try and extract more money through the use of microtransactions and loot boxes for cosmetic items in-game. And he considers this to be a shame, as I mentioned. Now, he appreciates the common argument against his point of view in that these microtransactions are purely for cosmetic items, and therefore it's okay. That's the argument as he put it against his point of view. But what he actually says, and I find this pretty compelling when I heard it, he says that unlockable content, whether it's cosmetic or not, is still part of the game. He explains that cosmetic unlocks in Overwatch are the sole purpose of leveling up in the game, and that all XP or experience points and medals all contribute to getting more loot boxes in the game. And he believes that psychologically and on a community level, that cosmetics do matter, that it's all part of the game experience. And if that cosmetics didn't matter, then people, for example, wouldn't be praising customization in RPGs, for instance. People like the fact that they can unlock these alternative costumes, look unique, and express themselves in different ways in comparison to other players. So effectively, he says these cosmetic items have an effect and that they are important. So as a result of this, again to sum up, he thinks it's a shame that Overwatch has implemented this microtransaction scheme for cosmetic items. Now to Total Biscuit's point of view. He's taken the line of argument that these microtransactions are purely for cosmetic items, and as a result, he's accepting of that. Total Biscuit, after listening to him for so many years, he definitely is someone that is pro-consumer, without a doubt. But even with that traditional stance that he takes, he still believes that these kinds of microtransactions, even though Overwatch is charging an upfront fee, he still believes this to be okay. And again, that's because these are purely cosmetic items that don't affect gameplay in the game. They don't make you a better player, they don't give you better items, they don't give you better weapons or power-ups. They're purely for the way you look in the game and the way you can express yourself in the game. And he considers that to be very different to pay to win, is how I would describe it, where there are microtransactions to purchase weapons or power-ups or other items that make you a better player, that can give you an advantage over other players. And of course, in a multiplayer game, that's very important, because if you can use money to purchase items to help you easily beat other players in a multiplayer game, that can be a bit of a problem, especially if a lot of players don't have the additional funds or excess cash to purchase these better items and better weapons. So with those arguments out of the way, I want to present my point of view on this topic. I'm not necessarily against microtransactions in and of themselves. I won't look at a game that has microtransactions as instantly bad. And to be fair, Jim Sterling doesn't criticize the quality of the game just because it had microtransactions. He still gave it a 9 out of 10. He still believes the game is really, really good. He just doesn't like the fact that it has microtransactions because it charged an upfront fee for the game. But going back to my line of argument, I'm not necessarily against the idea or concept of microtransactions. It all, in my opinion, comes down to how they're implemented. With microtransactions, I believe you run into troubles where you're able to purchase items in-game that objectively make you a better player, that make you stronger or make you equip weapons or items or power-ups that can make you a better player than other players. And of course that matters in multiplayer competitive games where you're versing other players online. So I do believe that with those kinds of games or with those kinds of microtransactions, which I would explain or describe as pay to win, that's where troubles come into it. But similar to Total Biscuit, I believe that if a game only offers cosmetic microtransactions, then that is okay. Then that is, I guess, not as bad. Now, I'm not ignorant of the fact that microtransactions are implemented in games to extract more money from users. Of course, I understand that. We all need to bear in mind that at the end of the day, video games is a business, it's an industry, and companies need to make money, and they want to make as much money as possible. Many of these companies are publicly traded companies, and even if they're private as well, profit is always at the top of their mind. Companies are always trying to make as much profit as possible. I'm not ignorant of that fact, and I'm well aware that microtransactions are potentially another really great revenue stream for developers and publishers of games like Overwatch. However, I appreciate the fact that this is a business, and I appreciate the fact that companies need to make a profit. And I want to put to you this before I explain my opinion any further. Take a look at the graph on screen right now. This is a graph entitled Average Price for New Console Games Adjusted for Inflation. Effectively what it's doing is trying to compare the price of games back in the 90s to the modern day. Now this is from an Ars Technica article. I will link that in the description below. Now what it does, again, is compare the prices of games back in the 90s to the price of games today and adjust for inflation. That's an important aspect that we need to bear in mind. When you're comparing monetary figures from the past, you always need to adjust for inflation. That's what it does. And what this shows, this graph shows that the retail price for games have actually decreased over time. So effectively, nowadays, for each individual sale of a game at full retail price, developers and publishers are making less money than they would have if they sold that game back in the 90s. But what's important to bear in mind is that games have gotten incredibly more complex. They've gotten bigger, they have better graphics, there are more levels, they're more in depth. Games are just incredibly more complex and in depth and large compared to what they were back in the day in the 90s. And as a result, the costs for developing games have definitely gone up compared to those days. Yet even with the increase in cost of development, whether it's having to hire more people and expend more money on salaries to develop these games, however you want to explain it, even in the midst of an increase in the cost of development of games, the price of games have actually decreased when you adjust for inflation. So because of that, I understand that developers and publishers of games need to extract more money above and beyond the retail price of games in order to justify the cost of development today. So yes, the price of games were sold back in the 90s. When you bring it to today's time, I'd argue that that price is probably not enough to justify all of these costs for development. So publishers and developers of games need to find other ways to extract money for consumers. And a big way that they've done this is through merchandise sales, special editions, different types of plushies, collectibles, figurines, whatever it is. Another way that they've done this is through DLC, season passes, and microtransactions. This is why I'm not completely against microtransactions in and of themselves. I understand that in many cases, microtransactions may be necessary to justify the investment for developing a game because of costs and because of the way the prices of games have adjusted over time with inflation. So because of that, I'm not going to criticize microtransactions completely without first at least giving microtransactions in an individual game the benefit of the doubt and see how they are implemented. And with Overwatch, because they're for purely cosmetic items in-game that don't affect gameplay, that don't make you a better player, I believe that that's okay. I understand that more money needs to be extracted from individual players, and of course companies need to make as much profit as possible. That's how businesses work. These kinds of games that offer microtransactions for cosmetic items only, I'm okay with that. Again, there are problems when microtransactions start to become pay to win, where you can buy items that objectively make you a better player in-game that affect gameplay. So those are my opinions on microtransactions and Overwatch. I would love to get all of your thoughts on this topic in the comments below, bearing in mind everything that I've said in this video and also the opinions of Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit on this issue. Again, respectfully debate with each other in the comments below and disagree with me if you want to. I always appreciate alternative points of view and I'm always willing to engage in a respectful discussion with people. Even Jim Sterling said that he loved Total Biscuit's video on this topic because they can engage in rational, level-headed discussion about it. So I would like to do the same with all of you. Please put your thoughts in the comments below. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, this has been Lone. Please take care of yourself. And as always, keep fighting the good fight.